You ever hear a knock on your bedroom door after midnight? Don't answer it, because last week Ethan did. He opened the door and saw a girl standing there, who had been dead for 7 years. This is the night he wishes he could forget. Ethan was a 21-year-old college student living in a rented apartment in Denver. The place was cheap, old, and a bit lonely, but he liked it. The only strange thing was, his landlord specifically warned him, never open your bedroom door if someone knocks after midnight. Ethan thought it was a joke. Old landlords always say weird things. That was until the first night. Night 1, the first knock at exactly 12:17 a.m., Ethan woke up to a soft knock. Toke, toke, toke. He checked his phone. No notifications, no messages. He ignored it and went back to sleep. But right before he dozed off, he heard a girl whisper, "Please, open the door." He shot up in fear. There was no one outside his room, no footsteps. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Date of the photo the next morning, he mentioned the knocking to his neighbor, Mrs. Turner. She looked worried. "Did you see anyone? A girl?" Ethan shook his head. She sighed and handed him an old photograph. There was a young girl, standing in a hallway that looked exactly like Ethan's apartment. Mrs. Turner whispered, "Her name was Lily. She used to live in your room." Ethan felt cold. "I used to?" he asked. Mrs. Turner nodded slowly. "She died here 7 years ago." Night 2, the voice returns that night. Ethan tried to stay awake, tried to ignore everything. But at 12:17 a.m., the same knocking returned, only this time was louder. Toke, 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 toke. Ethan held his breath. Then he heard it. "Ethan, I'm cold. Please let me in." She knew his name. The door handle slowly began to turn on its own. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the door as the handle moved back and forth, like someone desperately trying to get in. He shouted, "Who are you?" The voice whispered, "You know me." A small handprint appeared on the door, from the inside of the wood. Night 3, the truth. Ethan forced himself to confront the landlord the next morning. The landlord finally revealed the truth. Lily, the girl in the photo, wasn't murdered. She didn't die normally. She was found sitting on the floor of Ethan's room, door locked from the inside, scratching at the wood. Her last word carved into the door was, "Help." The landlord repainted the door, but the marks still bleed through sometimes. Final night, the door opens. Ethan decided to record everything with his phone. He placed the camera facing the bedroom door. At 12:17 a.m., the knocking started again. The room temperature dropped suddenly. His breath turned white. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then the door slowly creaked open. On its own, a small girl stepped inside. Pale skin, dark hair covering her face, wearing the same dress from the old photo. She whispered, "You finally opened the door." Ethan screamed. The camera fell. The screen turned black. Ending the next morning, neighbors found Ethan unconscious on the floor. No one else was in the room. The door was locked from inside, exactly like Lily's case. When Ethan checked the footage, the last thing visible was the girl's face getting closer to the camera and saying, "Your turn." And since that day, every night at 12:17 a.m., someone knocks on Ethan's door. If you ever hear a knock on your bedroom door after midnight, don't answer it, because last week, a young man named Ethan did. Opened the door and saw a girl standing there. A girl who had been dead for 7 years. This is the night he wishes he could forget. Ethan was a 21-year-old college student, renting a small, cheap apartment in Denver. The place was old and a bit lonely, but he didn't mind. The only truly strange thing was the warning his landlord gave him on the day he moved in. He had leaned in close and said, "Whatever you do, never open your bedroom door if someone knocks after midnight." Ethan just laughed it off. He figured old landlords always had their quirks and superstitions. That was until his first night in the apartment. That night, at exactly 12:17 a.m., a soft knock woke him from a deep sleep. Toke, toke, toke. Just 3 faint taps on his bedroom door. He grabbed his phone, thinking maybe a friend had come over late, but the screen was dark. No notifications. No messages. He told himself it was probably just the old building settling, the pipes groaning. He rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. But just as he was about to drift off, he heard a girl's voice, a faint whisper that seemed to come from right outside his door. "Please, open the door." He shot up in bed, his heart pounding. He listened, straining his ears, but there was nothing. No sound of footsteps walking away. No sign that anyone had been there at all. The hallway was completely silent. He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, still unnerved, he saw his next-door neighbor, Mrs. Turner, an elderly woman who had lived in the building for decades. He casually mentioned the strange knocking and the voice he'd heard. The friendly smile vanished from her face. She looked worried. "Did you see anyone?" she asked, her voice low. "A girl." Ethan shook his head, explaining he hadn't opened the door. Mrs. Turner let out a long, shaky sigh and disappeared into her apartment for a moment. She came back holding a faded old photograph and handed it to him. In the photo, a young girl with dark hair and a serious expression stood in a hallway that looked exactly like the one outside Ethan's apartment. Her name was Lily, Mrs. Turner whispered. "She used to live in your room." An icy chill ran down Ethan's spine, a feeling that had nothing to do with the morning air. "Used to?" he asked, already dreading the answer. Mrs. Turner nodded slowly, her eyes filled with sadness. "She died here, in that room, 7 years ago." That night, Ethan was on edge. He tried to stay awake, blasting music through his headphones, hoping to drown out any sound from the hallway. He kept telling himself it was all a coincidence, a figment of his tired imagination. But at 12:17 a.m., like clockwork, the knocking returned. Only this time it wasn't soft. It was louder, more insistent. Toke, 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 toke. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut and held his breath, praying for it to stop. Then he heard the voice again, clearer, this time right at the door. "Ethan, I'm cold. Please let me in." She knew his name. How did she know his name? His blood ran cold. Then, to his absolute horror, he saw the brass doorknob begin to turn. Slowly, it twisted back and forth, as if someone on the other side was desperately trying to force their way in. He was frozen in his bed, staring at the handle, unable to move or breathe. Finally, finding his voice, he shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" The rattling stopped. The only reply was a whisper filled with a chilling sort of familiarity. "You know me." And then, something impossible happened. A small handprint like that of a child began to materialize on the surface of the door. It wasn't a wet print left on the wood. It was appearing from within the wood itself, pushing outward, a ghostly gray against the dark paint. The next morning, terrified and sleep-deprived, Ethan confronted his landlord, demanding an explanation. Cornered, The old man finally broke down and told him the full story. Lily, the girl in the photograph, wasn't murdered. She didn't have an accident. The police were baffled by her death. She had been found in that very room with the door locked from the inside. She was just sitting on the floor, her fingers bloody, having spent her last moments scratching frantically at the wooden door. When the police finally broke it down, they found a single word she had managed to carve into the wood with her fingernails. Help. The landlord had repainted the door, of course, tried to cover it up. But he admitted that sometimes, late at night, the letters would start to bleed through the new layers of paint, as if the wood itself refused to forget. That was it. Ethan knew he couldn't spend another night just waiting in fear. He had to know what was happening. He decided he would record everything. He set up his phone on his desk, the camera aimed directly at the bedroom door. He sat on his bed, the covers pulled up to his chin, and waited. The minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. Then, at 12:17 a.m., the knocking began. This time, it was a frantic, desperate banging that shook the entire door in its frame. Simultaneously, the temperature in the room plummeted. He could see his own breath. A white cloud in the air. The banging echoed through the small room, loud and violent. Then it just stopped. An eerie, heavy silence fell over the room, and then the door slowly creaked open, all on its own. A small figure stood in the dark doorway, a young girl. Her skin was unnaturally pale, and a curtain of long dark hair hid her face. She was wearing the same simple dress from the old photograph. She took a slow step into the room, then another. The air grew heavy and cold. She stopped at the foot of his bed and whispered, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. "You finally opened the door." Ethan let out a scream of pure terror. He scrambled backward, his hand knocking the phone, and the camera fell. The screen went black. The next morning, worried neighbors who had heard the scream called the landlord. They found Ethan unconscious on the floor of his bedroom. The room was empty. There was no one else there, and the door. It was locked from the inside, exactly like it had been 7 years ago with Lily. When Ethan finally woke up in the hospital, he frantically checked the footage on his phone. Most of it was just a dark, blurry mess after it fell. But the final few seconds were chillingly clear. Just before the screen went black, the footage showed the girl's face, her dark hair falling away to reveal empty black sockets where her eyes should have been. She leaned directly into the camera lens and whispered the words, "Your turn." And since that day, Ethan has never been the same. Can't sleep in a room with the door closed, because every night, no matter where he is, at exactly 12:17 a.m., he hears it. A soft, familiar knock, and he knows it's her. He knows she's waiting, and he knows he can never, ever answer.